My name is Ginny Blankenship. I am an artist. I'm a musician and singer, songwriter, but I'm also a energy healer practitioner. Okay, I started out with this. I was told a long time ago that if you want to know what your purpose in life is, to figure out what you like to do under the age of 5, and things that you like to do by yourself is a pretty good clue as to your future and your purpose for being here. So for me, you know, as a little girl like that and living on 160 acres in the country, I drew endlessly on a little blackboard, which I became a professional artist later. I loved animals, I loved nature, and I'm very much an environmentalist. And I loved to sing, I loved music, and I became a singer and a musician. And then I was always fixing the dogs or the cats, whether they needed to be fixed or not. You know, putting bandages on them. And I also had a lot of compassion. I didn't ever like for anything to hurt, you know. So there was this something in me that if something was hurt, I just couldn't stay away from it. I was trying to do something to help it all the time. So in that regard, that's, I think, where the, you know, the energy healing came in later in life, although that was the last thing to unfold for me. I never thought any more about energy healing. I was doing good with the art and the music, but something happened, I think, really that probably opened a huge door and helped me to actually, one door opened that helped to open many doors later. And that was, I had a visitor here one night. And for years, I didn't know what it was, but it was in the middle of the night. And I heard footsteps coming down the hall. And I was in bed sleeping with my husband, and he was faced that way, I was faced the other way. And at first, when I heard, I'm a light sleeper, and I heard the footsteps, and I thought, oh, that's my husband, Russell. And then all of a sudden I realized he was laying right next to me. And then I kind of froze, and whoever it was came right into the bedroom and pressed on the edge of the bed, and I could hear them breathing. And my heart was jumping up in my throat, and I was literally just playing possum. And all of a sudden they left, and then I sat up and I looked around. I didn't hear anything, and I thought I must have been dreaming or something. So I laid back down and snuggled into my husband's back, and then they came in again. This time they came around the other side of the bed. And I continued to play possum. I was scared, but I began to feel an intensity right here at the third eye. And I don't know how long that went on, but when they left, I seen 2 small figures pass in front of the window. And I had the bedroom with the divider, or window with the divider in it, and what I seen were 2 small figures, small bodies, large heads. I was very nearsighted at the time, so I couldn't see the details, but I seen the farm, but they were below my window divider. And then, strangely, I went to sleep. Well, about 5 a.m. I wake up remembering everything, and I was just like, what the heck was that? And told my husband about it, and he was puzzled. And so I thought, oh, it must have been the boys coming in. My boys were little at that time. So I went and asked them if they came in, did they have a bad dream or something? And they go, no, Mom, we didn't come in there. And I said, well, come here. And I had them pass in front of the window, and I laid down, and my sons were both above the divider. So I thought, whoops, that wasn't them. So I really didn't know what it was for years and years. Then later on, I began to kind of piece it together that I may have had a visitation from ETs of some sort. But the important thing, though, is that after that, I began to read a lot. My subject matter changed. I began to take on a whole different outlook on life, actually. And I was like a horse with a tight rein. I was like chomping at the bit to, what is this about? I began to have dreams about earth changes, flooding, tornadoes, a whole list of things. So long story short, I really think something happened there that really promoted changes in my life quickly. And so little did I know that I think part of that change was going to be energy healing. My son at that time wore glasses, my youngest son, and he was constantly breaking them. And one day we were swimming down at the river, and sure enough, he broke his glasses again. He had just broke them a few months earlier. So I went down to St. Louis. We went to Contacts and Eyeglasses there on Watson Road. And I went there thinking that they would be covered under warranty for the breakage. And the girl who was working there that day said, "No, we don't cover this." But she said, "But there's a man down the street." And she told me the building and everything and where to go to get them fixed. So I went down there, and that place was closed, but here was pathways underneath on the bottom. Now, I've often thought about that. I'm sure I would have never went in that store had I not been directed to go there. So I went inside, and I was just fascinated with the books and the subject matter, and I began to really read, Come to find out with the glasses, I came back to the eyeglass place and came back in, and the lady says, "Oh, I'm so glad you came back. They are under warranty." And I thought, well, that was silly. I just went down there for nothing. No, I didn't go down there for nothing. So I think it was one of those little twists of fates, that began to occur. And actually, there was a whole lot of things like that started to happen. So with getting in contact with that place, I learned Reiki, and I was really excited about that. And I remember on the second attunement, I came here home one night, and it was after midnight before I got back home, and I was real excited and told them, I said, well, I just had my second attunement, and I was just all lit up. Everybody went to bed, and at that time I had a fibroid tumor in my uterus. It was considered a pre-existing condition, and no insurance would cover it. So I was on this mission to find some way to get rid of that tumor. So that was also a motivating force to learn more about energy work, alternative methods, and stuff like that. So after the Reiki attunement, I was laying there in bed, and I would put my hands on my stomach, and I fell asleep. But I woke up, and I had my window open. It was a beautiful, warm fall evening, and I woke up to the sound of music. And it was like, well, later on I kind of found, I think it was celestial music. It was like chords of progression, and it would crescendoed up and then came back down over and over and over, and it was beautiful. But I thought, what, did somebody leave a radio on? So I went through the house checking everybody was sound asleep, no TVs on. I stuck my head out the window. The music sounded like it was coming straight above the house. We live a half a mile from the closest neighbor. So, there was nothing coming through the woods or anything. I laid back down, and the music stopped, but the heat in my hands that I had been feeling along with the music stopped too. And I thought, you mean they're connected? And so that left me really baffled for a while. But that was kind of like just the beginning, I think. There was something going on. Then I learned remote viewing from my friend Rich Berry. Began to learn a lot more about the power of the mind and how we can see things that you don't normally see. So the remote viewing was really an asset to my understanding, I think, for what was to come. And then in 2004, I got the reconnection from the reconnective healing. And for me, when I went on that seminar in Kansas City, something in me stirred hard and fast that it just, I I was putting the art and music and everything behind me, and this was just like, this was something I was just really geared towards. And it felt so right, you know, and I found myself getting really excited. Well, I got even more excited on that weekend when I realized that I was reacting to that energy far more strongly than anybody else. There was just maybe 2 or 3 people that were reacting like I was to that energy. And I was feeling all kinds of things and jerking and twisting, and most people couldn't feel much of anything, you know. So I thought, why is that? So that weekend I actually got the reconnection because he was going to be there the next weekend. So you had to get the reconnection to learn, to go to the level 3 seminar to learn how to give the reconnection. So that one blew my mind when I was on the table. I don't want to say too much about all that happened because I don't want to implant in a person's mind about what can happen. But I will say this, it was very powerful, very dynamic. I had no control much over my own body. It was like it was doing its thing. But what I didn't tell you is that, you know, when I was 15, I was drugged by a horse. So I had a lot of upper back and neck injuries from that. So I had been suffering from vertigo for about 35 years. And as I got older, the vertigo was getting worse and worse and worse. And I mean, vertigo is like gravity just pulls you to the ground, you know. And I paint murals and stuff, and there was a couple of times I fell right off the easel because of vertigo. And then sometimes I'd be sick for like 2 weeks with it. So I was getting to where I was having between 5 and 7 spells a year of vertigo. And got the reconnection, and I heard a voice in my head saying, "We are correcting an injury in childhood." And then I knew, I figured it was from being drugged by a horse, even though I'd been told differently, because that's when so many issues started. Anyway, the next 3 days I had intense pressure at the base of my skull after the reconnection. And on a Tuesday I was going to go to the chiropractor because it was really bothering me. He happened to be sick that day, so I didn't go. A few hours later, the pressure just left like that, but I never had another spell of vertigo. So that's been 14 years, right? No, 10 years. So it's been 10 years, and yet I had been having it steady Eddie, you know, for years. So that was a real big cure for me with the reconnection. And also there were a lot of other changes that started. I began to, some of my old friends sort of went by the wayside. I was getting new friends. I was getting a new focus. I had always been more shy, more withdrawn, more reserved, and I became more brave and more outspoken and more sure of who I was, you know. I could feel it, you know, just changing in me. So then I started doing that work first. An interesting thing is I noticed when I would do Reiki on people, they would show the registers of the reconnective healing. So I thought, well, where's Reiki anymore? So I think Reiki's still beautiful, and it was definitely a stepping stone for me, but I began to quit using it because I could see that this other energy was taking over, perhaps more strong than the Reiki was. That's what it felt like to me. Plus, I noticed people were, you know, having changes that I never seen in Reiki per se. The other thing I liked about it was with Reiki, I tended to sometimes pick up people's stuff more easily. With reconnective healing, it's about a foot above the body. You do the work. So I wasn't getting that physical contact as much, so I wasn't having the effects of it as much. But I was also learning that a lot of that is in your mind too, and in your thoughts. So I began to change my way of thinking about energy healing. I live out in the country in a rural area, a conservative area, and yet I found myself being called for healings. I started to travel. It seemed like it just kept unfolding very rapidly. Again, seemed like a sign that this is what I was supposed to do. And then about 4 years later, I heard about another man, Richard Bartlett, who teaches matrix energetics, and I began to go to those seminars. Now, those two energy frequencies are sort of connected, I think, because Richard Bartlett had spoken at the seminars about having gone to Eric Pearl's The Reconnective Healing seminars as well. So that energy was in him as well and helped promote him to do what he is now doing with matrix energetics. So I kind of received that one with open arms and became certified with matrix energetics, which was not easy to do because you have to do quite a number of documented healings that have a significant change in the client. I think it was like 75, so that takes a while, and a lot of people don't even bother to get certified with it. So I did get certified, and the cool thing with this is once you're certified, you do have to attend a seminar every year because it's a quantum healing kind of energy, and they're learning so much about it so fast. In fact, when you go to a seminar with Matrix, the hardest thing with Matrix is unlearning everything that you thought was true or thought was real, because we're getting into another, like a quantum dimension of understanding, to understand that things are not solid like we think they are. They're actually flickering in and out of existence very quickly, you know. So that's just a whole other ball game, but it certainly has been a plus to the work that I was already doing. So I started doing that as well. But backing up a few years, I had also been introduced to feather medicine through a couple of different Indians. And I was told that if you're destined to do the feather medicine, that you don't go out and get the feathers on your own. You just wait and see if they come to you. And over a period of about 18 months, I received all the feathers that I was supposed to be working with, including the eagle feather, because that was the last one that I got, and I thought, how am I going to get that one, you know? But sure enough, you know, an Indian that I had met at a powwow announced to me one day that he had 4 things to give away, and he wanted to, he said, I like your energy and I would like to give you this. I didn't know what it was, but he said he wanted to present it at sundown at a prayer time. So, so we met midways because he lives western part of Missouri. So we met at a conservation center about 7:30 in the evening, and he is Cherokee, full-blooded Cherokee. So he presented this eagle feather to me and said this prayer, starting out facing the east, and I was supposed to hold it up. And he stood behind me and put his hand on each shoulder and said this prayer in Cherokee. And then as I faced the east, he said a prayer, the south said a prayer, west a prayer, and the feather began to vibrate hard. And then by the time I faced the north, it was vibrating and the energies were shooting down my arms. So afterwards he says, I've never seen that happen before, you know. He thought I was going to use the feather for powwow dancing, and I said, oh no, I'm going to use it for healing. He said, you are? And I said, yes, you know. So all the feathers are really beautiful, and I can't let that modality go either, because it's very beneficial, and it has its own unique power, I guess you could say, for having been used a certain way for so many years. And I'm highly respectful of the energy that each bird represents and what that healing does to the person. So, long story short, now I'm doing 3 different modalities. And then I learned more about Young Living essential oils. So I also use the oils at the end of a healing session, and I put that on their feet. But it's specifically what that person needs for that day. So it's specific oils. So it's become a good package. I don't blend the modalities. I do matrix, then reconnective healing, then the feathers, and then the oils. But it's still in one session. So it seems like if one don't get you, the other one does. And some people certainly do react more to matrix, or they'll react more to reconnective healing, or they may really react to the feathers. So it kind of depends on the soul of that person, you know, and their beliefs and stuff. So, so over the years, I have found them to be extremely enlightening. I learn so much from every person that I see. I learned a lot about myself as well. It's a very humbling and a very beautiful, expanding, inspiring experience, you know. Now, sometimes people say, well, what is energy healing? Or what is this energy? And where does it come from? In actuality, I think everybody is capable of doing energy healing. But some people are just called to it. You know, it's just like everybody can learn to draw, but some people are just better at it, you know? So some people have a natural gift. Maybe I think it's kind of that way with energy healing as well. With some people, it just seems like it falls into place, and then you find yourself doing it more and more, and it tends to increase. That connection increases. Seems like the power increases, you know, ever so slowly. I don't think the power source changes. It's just our opening changes. You know, we become more and more of an open vessel to receive perhaps more and more energy. And then that brings up, what about the client themselves? What do they have to do with this work? And that I can put people in 4 different categories. Just the regular human race. The first category is a lot of people just don't believe at all in energy healing. They just don't believe it. They think it's quackery and it's silly and foolish. If they were to get a healing, they probably wouldn't have much of any results whatsoever, because they're of a mindset that it's silly and foolish, and they will put a block up, and it probably won't do anything. Now, I say probably because there's always some exceptions there. The second group of people sort of believe and sort of don't. You know, they're kind of open to that until something happens that, you know, puts some doubt in there, and then they go, nah, or whatever. They're kind of half in, half out, you know, kind of sticking their foot in the water and not quite sure if they want to go in or not. You know, I've done healings on those kind of people, and it just depends on where they're at in their life. If they're pretty angry or bitter about something, they may fall into the first category of not believing. If they're kind of on the verge of making some changes in their life, you know, where they're more open up here, then something starts to happen, and then they become very much a believer, and they could have a very profound healing or not. And then the third group would be people that really believe in energy healing. Hey, they believe in just a lot of things. You know, they're very open, and that's most of the kind of people that I get for healings. And with those people, you know, I see a lot of times, in fact, almost always, a significant change occurs, whether it be mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual. But then that fourth category is very exceptional. They've gone beyond that third category. The third category people are a little bit more egotistical yet, you know, like, oh, I know I can heal, or I know, you know, and they get real excited and blah, blah, blah. But the fourth category are very humble, very peaceful. They don't come to me and say, I know I'm going to heal. They've been healing a lot already in their life in all kinds of things. they strike me as just being real pure spirits. And those people heal without a doubt. And the thing of it is they're not even surprised by it. Whereas the third category people are really surprised, and because they're still pretty strong in the ego thing, you know. Wow, I healed and you didn't, you know. And they may kind of do things like that. But the fourth category, yeah, they're unusual, but they are out there. And they're exciting to be around. Sometimes I'm asked by people, what exactly happens during an energy healing session? And what do you do, you know? So I'm going to give you just a little quick layout of what I do. Number one, I get your full name. I get your birth date. I have studied numerology and astrology a little bit, so it gives me a little clue, a little bit more about you. But mainly is your name, your full name. And with your name, you know, there's actually many ways to tap into an all-knowing essence of just about everything you'd want to know about a person. But there's a protocol that I follow, and this is with Matrix Energetics, and it's about 12 pages of protocol, and using the person's name, I go through those categories and words come out for me about that person. I really don't know anything about that person when I'm doing this. In fact, it's better that I really don't know that much about that person, because then what I'm getting is more true blue. So they're in different categories, and these categories are just means of helping you to understand you a little more, mentally, spiritually, physically, or emotionally, because these are all things that lead to illnesses and disease patterns of sorts. You know, an illness doesn't happen overnight. It's usually a very long process of many years of maybe emotional abuse on ourselves, physical abuse on ourselves, emotional abuse, spiritual neglect, you know. So this occurs over many, many years. But right there, I'd like to include something. We have energy lines running up and down our body. In fact, quite a few years ago in the middle of the night, and I've never done drugs, and I've never even been drunk, so it's not that. But I woke up one night, and I felt this pulsing in my arm. And what I seen in my hand were these lines that were perfectly spaced. And they were, of course, the room was dark, but it was like these lines were like the size of a thread, and they were blue, like neon blue. They glowed, and on each little line was a little blue, a little smaller than a BB, and it was shooting down my arm just extremely fast. And I'm sitting there looking at this and thinking, wow. And I had my hand on my husband's shoulder, and when I took my hand off, it went away. Put my hand on, and I seen it again. So it was his energy that added to what I was allowed to see. Now, at that time, that was before I was doing any energy work, but I never forgot it, and I didn't know what it was. Well, now I know. These energy lines run through our body, and actually the color was correct and everything, I found it, but they're called grid lines. And so with an emotional, like say, for instance, a lot of times I'll give this as an example with people, the liver, one of the emotions that's sort of a stronghold in the liver is anger. So if a person has many years of anger, if you can see these grid lines rushing down your body, okay, and it goes past the liver and you're an angry person, that energy is going to slow when it gets over the liver and then speeds up again. Well, when this happens over many, many, many years, the liver begins to get diseased. It begins to attract toxins, more disease, And it all starts with your emotions and your thoughts and your anger that you're not dealing with. So illness is kind of like the spirit's way of waking you up and saying, hey, something's wrong in the way you're looking at things, you know, you need to make some corrections. Now, I do want to make a point, though, that some illnesses are from the toxins in the world, you know, the environmental toxins. I mean, we've got to quit doing what we're doing with this planet, and it's making us sick, and it's making us sick fast. But you couple that with blocked emotions or unattended to feelings, and you've got a recipe for illness. You know, it's just a matter of time. So all those things have to be considered. But anyway, so I tried to explain these words, and actually, you know, the client participates with me, you know, and I'll ask them, you know, what does this word mean to you? You know, because I don't have all the answers, but usually people are pretty open to it, and they're very helpful. And by the time we're done with all the different categories that show up for that person, they get a real good outline of, wow, looks like I'm doing the same thing over and over, and I think I need to start thinking different, or I think I need to maybe get a different relationship or make some changes in that relationship because, whoa, it's starting to make me sick, you know, or maybe get a different job, or maybe just learn to look at the negatives in a different way. That alone can help you heal. But, you know, if we don't consider all the influences that make us sick, we'll probably get sick again. You can take medicine, which is just like a Band-Aid, but, you know, if you don't get down to the core of why you got ill to begin with, you know, you're going to get something else or whatever, and it's just going to keep progressing. So we go over all of that first, and most people are very open to that and very receptive to that because they find it very helpful. And then matrix is done. They sit on my massage table, and it's done with a lot of 2 points. It's done with a lot of intentions, and it's done with frequencies. There's 21 frequencies with matrix energetics, and each frequency has a specific energy power, and it's been used many, many times. So if I say you're getting frequency 1, download, activate, run to complete, that's exactly what's going to happen in your body or wherever I decide to put it according to what I find on you earlier. Because some organs will show up, you know, different aspects of your body will show up as being weakened or maybe in danger of becoming diseased. So I will put frequencies, even colors. I will do dimensional work. I will do time travel even. It's all, matrix energetics is pretty exciting, and it's many different aspects of the healing. But this is all done while you're sitting there. And then I have you lay down when I'm done with the matrix, which may take a little while. And then with the reconnective healing, it's done above the body. So, you know, there's some things I tell them to get prepared for, which is mentally, and get them really relaxed. And then I start the reconnective healing. And it's just done all around the body. There's registers that show up in the body. Certain, like the most common register is flickering of the eyelids. So I have the clients close their eyes, and so I watch for the registers. If I hit a spot on the body where there's a strong reaction in the body, then I stay in that area for a while until the registers calm. So it's almost, they've done studies with reconnective healing, I think, which is really interesting. Nowadays they've got all kinds of instruments that measure light and frequency of every kind. So in these studies, the practitioner would be doing the healing over the client, and they would begin to notice with these special cameras that there would be an intense light come down through the top of the practitioner's head. So it comes down through the hands and out the hands. And so our job is to circle that energy around the person's body. But one of the things they discovered, which was really awesome, was they noticed after a few minutes of healing that a darker, denser light would come out the top of the head of the client. So it's like light chasing out a darker light, you know. They were pretty stunned by that, you know. So there is definitely, and they've also even noticed some changes in the physical brain after like the reconnection, with some things that actually change. Little like scar matters, or things that actually a lot of doctors don't really know what they are, but they tend to go away. So that's done for as long as it takes. And then I do the feather medicine, starting with the eagle feather. I don't really want to go into what each feather represents because it's a very sacred thing, but it's very beautiful, very powerful, I think. And then lastly, then I do the oils on their feet. And of course, you know, there's a lot of things I'm not telling that goes into the session, but that's the gist of it. And the whole thing from beginning to end usually takes about 2 hours, especially for first-time clients. Second time, you know, maybe, I don't know, a lot of times we get to talking because people start to understand and they begin to actually talk more. And so sometimes, you know, a second session can be an hour and a half easy, you know. You know, there's many, many different healings that's occurred over the years. And I can't really say that maybe some are more powerful than others, although there have been some that have been physically very outstanding. But I do want to make this point. It seems like that with this work that sometimes physical changes happen right away, you know, but it doesn't stop there. It tends to, it's like once you're introduced to this energy, it just makes a difference in your life. And it seems like things keep unfolding in a positive manner. Sometimes things can be a little unsettling because there's changes you got to make in your life, you know, to get to this higher spiritual level. Because I really do think this work that I do really does lead a person to a higher spiritual understanding. But a couple of examples, I guess, I could give. One man came here who was very much like that fourth category that I talked about. Very peaceful man, very, I don't want to say anybody's names, but very humble. And he drove up in an old rickety truck, and he drove quite a ways. And whenever I asked him to name the things he was grateful for, the first thing he said, "I'm grateful for my pickup," you know. And I just had to smile because that's how humble he was. Well, he had had many years of long suffering in a motorcycle accident and physical pain, and he had been taking pain medications for years and years and years, had quite a few accidents, even hitting his head. Needless to say, you know, he was hurting pretty bad. But he knew, and I could tell by talking to him, that he was one of these people that was so calm, so at peace, and so happy with the simple things in life. And 2 healings he got. And when he came back the second time, I said, "Well, how was your," I think it was like 2 weeks. I said, "How was the last 2 weeks?" He says, "You got all day?" And I said, "What?" And he goes, He says, you would not believe the things that are gone. And he got the second healing. I mean, the pain that he had been dealing with all his life just went away. And the second healing, of course, seemed like it took care of what the first one didn't, you know. I talked to him quite a few months later, still just fine. You know, it's just pretty miraculous. Another lady from another state had lupus since she was 15. And the lupus caused her kidneys to fail. So here she was, maybe 35 at that time. Very good spirit, had learned. She had some really hard knocks in life, you know, but her little hands were twisted from the lupus. Very pretty girl, but and very positive nature. And I knew something was really special about her when I was doing the feathers one time, because I was teaching a seminar, and some people were there, and I wasn't teaching the feathers. I was helping teach something else, but they wanted to see a healing done. So I was doing a healing on this girl. And one of the things I do with the pileated woodpecker feathers is find blockages in the body. And sometimes when you find a blockage, they spin so fast that sometimes they'll fall out of my hand because you hold them lightly. Well, when I come to her kidneys, which had failed already, and she was on dialysis, they spun so fast they dropped. But instead of dropping to the ground, it levitated in the air. And here there were a few men that wanted to watch, and I looked up at them, and they were all talking. They never even seen it. So somebody told me later that they weren't of the spirit to even see this. But that's the first time I ever seen that happen. So I just re-grabbed the feather in midair. And so I proceeded, and I thought, So long story short, she had several healings and the reconnection. And she got all excited because she says, I'm peeing. And she just knew her kidneys were starting to work again. And but the doctor said they didn't understand how that could be. And they said, and it was just the one kidney, because the other one I could tell was pretty much toast, you know. But they said if the only way to tell if the kidney is really working would be to run a test, but which could permanently damage the kidney. So there was just no way to tell. But they did say this: her lupus went into remission. She was healthier than they had ever seen her be, and she already had a kidney donor. And they said, now is the time to do it, because we've never seen you more healthy than you are now. So she did get a kidney transplant, and she was able to get a suntan and just live a full, healthy, changed her relationships in her life, and is really a productive person and very happy person. So that was, you know, those are two of the more substantial ones, you know, although there's been many animal healings where things just went away. A lot of things were things where people would call me and say, you know, I had a girl that had a big lump on her neck, and it wasn't cancerous or anything. She had one healing and called me a few days later. She had it for years. And I even asked her, what is that? She goes, I don't know, it's just a growth. It's been there for years. It just completely went away, you know. So it's just all kinds of things can happen. You know, it's just, but I like just as much, though, the things that happen that you don't see physically, because you do see a mental, emotional, and a spiritual change as well. So in conclusion, I would like to say to people that don't ever underestimate the power of your mind and how powerful the mind is over the body. And because it's pretty extraordinary. And I think where we are now as on this humankind journey is that we're just touching on that, the power of our intent. And some speculate that, you know, that the huge part of our brain that we don't use, they think we don't use, is actually being used, and it's very much like an antenna. So we connect with each other. We connect with all living things. You know, I'm talking about the trees and the animals and the earth itself, you know. So look at the power we have to heal with positive thinking and promotion of love and compassion. You know, the things that can cause changes in this world is all up here, you know. And I guess we all have to start with ourselves to heal ourselves and to gain that understanding, and then expand that out to the rest of the world. If you would like more information or would like to schedule a healing session, you can contact me on my website, woodswalker7.com, and drop me a note, give me a call, and we can go from there, and be nice to talk to you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.